Age-old story of the Flying Dutchman has spawned a lot of fiction, and I thought I'd give it a new twist. The Return of Jonathon Grise. I stood on the porch like one in a daze and stared at the oak-panelled door. She'd shut it so quietly there in my face that I just couldn't take it on board. Her face was composed but determined, I knew, dismissive, but what could it mean? The wedding we'd planned for the spring was no more, said the love of my life, Annie Dean. I stumbled on out in the gathering gloom, and winter crawled into my heart. The night was a portent of shadows and doom as an owl fluttered past in the dark. Storm clouds were filling the evening sky, and the wind set its wail in the trees. The name of a monster was echoed out there, the name of one, Jonathon Grise. He'd come to the village on just such a night, had stopped at the old village inn. The brim of his hat hid his face from the sight of the publican signing him in. He had an old trunk that he dragged to his room, a magical symbol on top. The publican smelt some old incense he burned, so he went up and told him to stop. I never was told what was said when he knocked. The publican staggered back down. His face and his hair had turned grey, so they say. When asked, the old man had just frowned. He never said anything more on the case, but bowed when he passed to keep peace. I sensed something evil, unclean in the man, that we all knew as Jonathon Grise. He never went out in the daytime, we knew, but pottered about in the dark. His cloak would be seen flaring out in the wind as he strode through the trees in the park. He bought the old cottage that stood by the shore, moved in with a Rottweiler hound. We dared not approach, or the dog would come out, bare its teeth, and start sniffing around. He was watched by the locals, but never approached, and he never spoke to a soul. He seemed quite content on his own in the dark, when the nights were both clammy and cold. Then one foggy night I saw Widow McLean walking down to his house from the fells. She walked in a daze, and her eyes, they were glazed, as she carried her basket of spells. Long thought to be harmless, a lonely old witch, she knocked at his door in the gloom, then entered and stayed for an hour or more, concocting her spells in his room. I asked how she knew him, the mystery man, on the following day in the square. She shivered, looked frightened, and held up one hand. I never was there. Barely a month had gone by since the gloom of rejection had landed on me. The heart that had loved had turned into a tomb for the love that had set us both free. Then rumours were whispered that in the great hall the banns had been read and released. The banns for the wedding of my Annie Dean with that horror called Jonathon Grise. My mind couldn't take it. I tore at my hair. I ripped at my coat and my shirt. I drank a whole bottle of whiskey off straight, in the hopes it would kill off the hurt. I wondered how long since the two of them met, and drunkenly swore my revenge. I set off to squeeze all the truth from the throat of the visiting widow from Henge. She screamed when she saw me, burst in through her door. I looked like a figure from hell. What spell had she cast there for Jonathon Grise? She finally said she would tell. The man is pure evil. I met him before. I met him before you were born. He came on the night of a westerly gale, cast out from a bark in the storm. I think he deserted. He wore seaman's clothes. He never went back to the sea. He married a woman and left her in child. A woman you'll never believe. Just try me, I snarled, so he's done it before. And now thinks he'll do it again. Ah, yes, but that happened when I was a child. I couldn't have been more than 10. I stopped in my tracks and I looked at her face. The widow was wrinkled and old. She must have been 77 or 8. I felt all my innards run cold. You must be mistaken. This Jonathon Grise must only be 30 or so. The man is the same, said the widow. His name is the sailor who never grows old. I sat for a moment to gather my thoughts. You say that he married close by? Ah, yes, that he did, but the woman he wed in the churchyard, now she lies. Just tell me her name and I'll leave you in peace, I replied with a portent of fear. Her name was Helene, and the child Richard Dean. You're Annie's great-grandfather, dear. I dropped like a thunderbolt onto the hearth. I couldn't stand up for my life. The devil had spawned the great-grandfather of the woman he'd have for his wife. My heart it burst, and 1,000 tears came flooding from deep within. There must be a way to send Jonathon Grise back down to the devil's kiln. I sat with the widow for 13 days. We read every spell in her book. On the morning before Annie's wedding bells rang, she tossed all her charms in the brook. You said he deserted a ship once at sea. Do you have a drowned sailor's spell? Her eyes had gleamed, old Widow McLean, as she lifted a call from the well. That night the moon stayed in and hid. The stars, they gave up their lease. A mist came rolling on in from the sea to the cottage of Jonathon Grise. A groaning and creaking of timbers and masts, and the plash of the oars then grew. The longboat sent from the ghostly bark rowed in with a ghostly crew. They dragged him swearing away to the beach. He cursed at the barquentine. They threw him into a longboat there, and then he began to scream. I watched as the ghostly sailing ship hove to in the rising swell, while Jonathon hung from the yardarm there, at last on his way to hell.